Another big week in the impeachment inquiry and what's expected to be the final few days of closed-door testimony before open hearings begin. So what's the administration's strategy? Well, that depends on the day. The president is bouncing between trying to out the whistleblower and intimidate a witness. Republicans appear poised to acknowledge a quid pro quo, but insist that it's not that high of a crime and misdemeanor. And Kellyanne Conway is pulling a Mick Mulvaney and really confusing the matter. It all comes with more new polls showing nearly half of Americans support impeaching and removing President Trump from office. Meanwhile, there is new 2020 polling on the Democrat side. We'll get into the state of that race in just a moment, as Elizabeth Warren defends her plan to fund Medicare for all. Could 2020 shape up to be a demagogue versus an ideologue? We'll talk about that. But first, President Trump was particularly active on Twitter over the weekend, and the increased frequency is usually a sign that he's concerned about something, nervous about something, maybe trying to distract. In this case, it's clearly the impeachment inquiry. Trump tweeted and retweeted 75 times over the weekend, up until just after midnight last night. Everything from retweets of the likes of Jeanine Pirro and Mark Levin praising a UFC fighter. He also attacked the whistleblower. The whistleblower got it so wrong that he must come forward. The fake news media knows who he is, but being an arm of the Democrat Party, don't want to reveal him because there would be hell to pay. Reveal the whistleblower and end the impeachment hoax, to which Mimi Rocah labeled witness intimidation and retaliation, period. Trump also went after the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff. If Shifty Adam Schiff, who is a corrupt politician who fraudulently made up what I said on the call, is allowed to release transcripts of the Never Trumpers and others that were interviewed, he will change the words that were said to suit the Dems' purposes. Republicans should give their own transcripts of the interviews to contrast with Schiff's manipulated propaganda. House Republicans must have nothing to do with Shifty's rendition of those interviews. He is a proven liar, leaker, and freak. This is our president, who is really the one who should be impeached. To which Brian Klaas responded, Trump calls the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee a freak and invents yet another insane conspiracy theory, and it will barely be a story. That's where we are. Democracy erodes when previously unthinkable conduct becomes so routine that it's barely even noticed by voters. That was the warning, Mike Barnicle, real quick, that Madeleine Albright gave so early on in this presidency, especially with her book, Fascism, A Warning.
You know what's interesting is his comments about the releasing the transcripts. I mean, Steve, you would know this. A lot of people know this. The stenographer who takes down the transcripts, it's not a Republican transcript. It's not a Democratic transcript. It's a legitimate transcriber,
right.
A stenographer, an independent person. You're sworn that this is an accurate transcript that you're taking. And the idea that, you know, the Republicans have a different transcript than the Democrats, absurd.
Yeah, no, it's not a partisan position, right?
Yeah.
No, the president even found time to attack a Purple Heart recipient who testified last week, labeling him a never-Trumper and threatening to reveal proof. Look at this.
Sir, what evidence do you have that Colonel Vindman is a never-Trumper?
We'll be showing that to you real soon, okay?
He's threatening him. Tom Nichols sums up Trump's unhinged weekend best, writing, it's not political polarization when people refuse to see tweets like this as the sign of a person who is unwell. To support his behavior in a man who controls a nuclear arsenal is evidence of moral rot among millions of Americans. Jonathan Lemire, you were with the president all weekend. What was different? And I then want to get to Michael Steele about the Republicans allowing this kind of behavior. But first, the president this weekend, your thoughts?
Well, we saw the president in public just once on his way to and from that UFC fight at Madison Square Garden. I was part of the press pool for that. I didn't see Barnacle in his usual front row seat for mixed martial arts.
Mike couldn't make it.
Yeah, but it was certainly an eventful night. He was greeted with a mix of cheers and boos, unlike the World Series, of course, where he was roundly booed. And I will say, one of the fighters got kicked unconscious right in front of us. But setting that aside, behind the scenes, and then we saw him briefly make some comments there on the White House lawn, he's fixated on the impeachment inquiry, and we seem to be going in a couple of different directions. He and Republican allies are really trying to smear the character of some of the key witnesses here. Vindman, as you said, who is a Purple Heart recipient, suggesting that, he has a political agenda here. And others have said that perhaps not loyal to his country because of he's an immigrant and has Ukrainian roots. That in itself is a sort of a sinister allegation. He's suggesting that the whistleblower, whose name is protected by federal regulations, he has legal protections. The name has leaked in some far-right conservative websites. It seems at this moment the president is dancing with the idea of unveiling him himself, which of course would send us into another sort of real political crisis and constitutional firestorm if he were to do so, suggesting that he, of course, the whistleblower, can't be believed because he's a, quote, never Trumper or someone who has a political agenda. And then you're seeing, as you hinted at the opening, the idea of Republicans trying to change their strategy a little bit with the concept of a quid pro quo. Either saying, well, all presidents do this is not unusual, or saying, well, yes, he did it, but it's not, and maybe it wasn't great, but it's not an impeachable offense. But the president himself, who refuses to suggest that he did anything wrong, last night on Twitter pushed back against that and said there was no quid pro quo, I didn't do anything wrong. So again, Republicans really seem to have a muddle in terms of a strategy to defend themselves and their president during this inquiry.
Michael Steele, it's hard to not find yourself recycling the same story as we tell the story of the Republicans. But if you could speak face to face to these Republicans who are acting as Trump's frontmen, McCarthy, Scalise, and others, especially in terms of the rot that chips away at our democracy, these tweets, intimidating a witness, bullying people, trying to not follow the law, refusing to comply with subpoenas. If you could talk to them face to face and confront them about the way this president is buying them off with attention, access, campaign money, what would you ask them to do? What could you say that could change this very unhealthy dynamic?
Well, I don't know if there's anything that I could say or any of us could say at this point that hasn't already been said, but I would ask this. Is it worth it? Is it really worth it? Is the value of democracy, the rule of law, the very ideals and principles that you've espoused for your entire political career, that you ran on as a freshman congressman or a two-term senator, as a leader both in the party and the country, is it worth it? Is this one man worth all that you are sacrificing right now? And then if the second part of that would be, where are you going to draw the line? If you didn't draw it at Charlottesville, if you didn't draw it at Baltimore, if you didn't draw it at locking kids up in cages, if you didn't draw it at a Muslim ban, where are you going to draw the line? Because that, as an American, not as a Republican, not as a partisan, as an American, I want to know from my leaders where you draw the line. I know where I've drawn it. And I know where countless of Americans have drawn it. But where have you drawn it? And if you haven't drawn it yet, please let us know when you do. I bet you it'll be too late, though.
Yeah,
that's the problem, Mika, is that these guys are so afraid of this one man that they're willing to sacrifice everything that they've stood on. And the other thing, all this talk over the weekend about a civil war around Donald Trump, and I'm going to ask you, are you really prepared to sit down with your constituents and support a quote, civil war because Donald Trump is in political trouble because of his own problems, what he's done? You're going to stand up for that. So draw me the line and let me know where it is. Make it bright and red so the rest of us will know as well. And then we'll understand exactly who you are and what kind